The wind had teeth that night. It bit at her cheeks, reddened her nose, and crept through the frayed seams of her second-hand coat. Mia pressed her chin deeper into her scarf, a faded plaid she'd found at Goodwill last winter, and held tight to the Tupperware container in her hands, plastic stained from years of use, now filled with sugar cookies she'd stayed up all night baking in her tiny apartment's barely working oven. It was Christmas Eve. Her hands were raw from scrubbing dishes during a 12-hour double shift at the diner, and her back ached from standing since dawn. But still, she showed up. Still, she came, because some foolish part of her believed that family might look different this time. That maybe her mother's sharp words in the family group chat had just been empty threats, frustration, something temporary. The porch light was warm, the living room windows steamed from the heat inside. Laughter floated through the cracks in the door, and the scent, honeyed ham, fresh rosemary, pine candles, wrapped itself around her heart like a memory she didn't quite trust. She stepped up, hesitated for half a second, then knocked. The door opened, and there she was, her mother. Hair curled, lips red, apron dusted with flour like a badge of effort. But there was no smile, no arms outstretched. "You didn't send any money this year, Mia," her mother said, crossing her arms. "We agreed everyone contributes if they want to join the dinner." Mia blinked. The wind whistled behind her. She looked down at the container in her hands, then back up at the house she grew up in, the one she had cleaned after school when her father got sick, the one she hadn't missed a holiday in for nearly 30 years. Her brothers were inside. Her sister. Their kids. There was even an extra car parked on the curb, probably some new boyfriend of someone she hadn't met. "I made cookies," she said, and instantly regretted how small her voice sounded. "That's sweet, but that's not the same as chipping in." "You didn't even reply to the message," her mother said. "We already have more than enough dessert." The silence between them stretched like thin glass. One wrong word would shatter it all. Mia swallowed hard. She felt, absurdly, like a child again, 7 years old, being told she couldn't have second helpings because she hadn't earned them. Her mother's eyes flicked to the container again, then back to Mia's face. "You understand, don't you?" her mother asked, soft but firm. "It's only fair." Mia nodded. Of course she understood. She always understood. She turned without another word. Walked back down the steps. The snow crunched beneath her boots. She didn't look back, though her vision blurred from more than just the wind. As she reached the sidewalk, she paused. Through the large front window, she could see them, her brothers, sitting at the table, hands full of turkey and stuffing. Her sister pouring wine. Kids tearing into presents too early. Her mother laughing at something someone said. She stood there a moment longer, then tucked the container of cookies under her arm and walked away. The street was quiet, except for the distant hum of a neighbor's holiday playlist and the occasional roar of a passing car. Somewhere down the block, someone was roasting chestnuts, the scent sharp in the air. Her breath came in clouds. Her hands ached from the cold. She didn't go home right away. Instead, she found a gas station that was still open, bought a cup of instant hot chocolate with the last wrinkled dollar in her wallet, and sat on the curb outside, sipping slowly. The cocoa was watery. The cup burned her hands. But it was warm. It was hers. When she got back to her apartment, there was no Christmas tree. Just the blinking light of the smoke detector needing new batteries, and the hum of the mini fridge. She didn't turn on the overhead light, only the string of dollar store fairy lights she'd taped across the windows. She set the cookies down on the counter, peeled off her coat, and sat. No messages from anyone. Not one. Not even her sister, who used to call her for everything. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through old voicemails. One from 2 years ago caught her eye. Her mom, cheerful. "Mia, sweetheart, bring your pie again this year, okay? Everyone loved it last time." She played it twice. Just to hear the word sweetheart again. Then she deleted it. It wasn't like that anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Maybe since the day her father died and the weight of everything, bills, caretaking, grocery lists, fell on Mia's shoulders while the others simply moved on. She'd stayed behind. Skipped college. Took up 2 jobs. Became the invisible glue holding everyone together. And when they didn't need her anymore, they pulled away like she was gum stuck to the bottom of a shoe. She lay on the futon, still in her diner uniform. The scent of grease lingered on her sleeves. The heater clicked once and stayed quiet. Mia pulled the blanket over her chest, stared at the ceiling, and waited for sleep. It didn't come. Instead, memories did. Of last year's Christmas, when she'd brought her famous pie, helped clean up, stayed to babysit the kids while everyone went out for drinks. No one said thank you. They never did. Tomorrow, she had another shift. The owner always scheduled her on holidays. "You don't have kids, right?" he'd say. "So you're free." It wasn't a question. The next morning, she woke to a gray sky and the hollow quiet of a world that had already moved on. Christmas was over. For everyone else, it had been full of joy and family and warmth. For Mia, it had been a reminder. A confirmation. She didn't belong. But she still had cookies. She took the container with her to the diner and left them in the break room with a note, "Merry Christmas." From Mia. Nobody said anything, but by the time her shift ended, the cookies were gone. And for now, that was enough. Later that night, long after the last customer had left the diner and the manager had locked the front door with a careless, "See you tomorrow," Mia stood alone behind the counter wiping down the surface. The lights hummed overhead. The smell of bacon and old coffee lingered like ghosts. Her feet throbbed, but she moved slowly, deliberately, like she was afraid of what would greet her when she got back home: more silence, more space. She tied up the trash, counted the register, and turned off the radio, the last noise in the room. For a brief second, she looked at her reflection in the window. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, hair tucked into a messy bun. She looked older than 29. Older than her older sister. Older than her mother. She turned away. Outside, the streets were wet with melted snow. Lights twinkled on porches, some houses still echoing with leftover music or late-night football games. She walked past them like a ghost herself, invisible in her dark jacket and quiet steps. Her fingers curled in her pockets, one of which held a folded envelope, an old electricity bill she hadn't paid yet. 2 more days and the power might be shut off. She'd have to choose between that and groceries. When she finally reached her apartment complex, a crumbling brick building with flickering hallway lights and a front door that stuck, she paused. Her upstairs neighbor was yelling again, drunk, probably throwing things. Mia climbed the stairs quickly, unlocking her door in the dark. Inside, the cold hit her first. The space heater had shut off again. She flipped it on, then waited near it, shivering slightly, before finally collapsing onto the futon. She lay there for a while, not moving. Just breathing. Just existing. And then she cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a few tired, quiet tears that rolled into her pillow, soaking through the fabric. They didn't fall because of the rejection that night, that had been expected, somehow. They fell because she was tired. Bone-deep tired. Of giving. Of waiting. Of hoping. In the morning, she woke up to a voicemail. Not from her mother. Not from her siblings. From her landlord. "Rent's late again, Mia. You know the rules." She showered quickly, barely warm water dripping down her back, then dressed in the same uniform, reheated day-old coffee in the microwave, and ate the last piece of bread with some mustard. That was breakfast. At the diner, the place was quieter than usual, holiday fatigue. She took advantage of the lull to grab a 5-minute break and sat on a crate in the back alley, breathing in cold air and nicotine from someone else's cigarette. She looked at her phone. Still nothing from anyone. Not even a "Merry Christmas." And then, suddenly, it rang. Her breath caught in her throat. She stared at the screen. Chloe calling. Her niece. She answered quickly, heart jumping just a little. "Hey, sweet pea. Auntie Mia. I saw cookies that looked like yours last night. Grandma said they weren't, but I think they were. Did you make them?" "I did," Mia said softly, blinking fast. "But I couldn't stay." "Why not?" "I wanted to sit next to you like last year." There was a rustling sound on the other end, and then a sharp whisper, her mother's voice. "Give me that phone." Click. The line went dead. Mia stared at the screen, her hand still holding the phone to her ear long after it had gone silent. She felt the tears rising again but bit them back. Not this time. She stood up and walked back inside the diner, where the cook nodded at her but didn't say a word. She tied her apron tighter and went back to refilling ketchup bottles. Later that week, when she opened her mailbox, there was a card from the church 3 blocks down, the one she walked past every day but never entered. A simple note: "We're accepting scholarship applications for adult nursing programs. Stop by if you're interested." She left it on her table, unread for days. On New Year's Eve, while everyone else counted down from 10 and shouted into champagne glasses, Mia sat on her futon watching reruns of a sitcom she'd seen 100 times. She didn't mind. At least the characters on screen cared about each other. She opened a notebook and began writing. Not a journal. Not resolutions. Just notes. Plans. A list of schools. Budgeting ideas. Pros and cons of applying. The next morning, she walked to the church. The sky was gray, her shoes soaked through by melting snow. The door was open. Warmth spilled out. She stood in the doorway for a long time. No one turned her away. No one asked if she had contributed. No one measured her worth in money. Someone simply smiled and handed her a clipboard. She filled out the form with shaky hands. Name. Address. Occupation. Waitress looked small and unimpressive on paper, but she didn't change it. When it asked about education, she paused. Technically, she had a year and a half of college. But she dropped out after her father's second stroke, just a month shy of her 20th birthday. She had planned to be a teacher once. English, maybe. She loved stories. But real life had no plot twist that saved her. Her pen hovered over the section for emergency contact. She left it blank. When she handed the form in, the woman behind the counter smiled, not overly friendly, but genuine. Mia felt something stir in her chest. Recognition, maybe. Or just the shock of being seen without judgment. That night, she found herself remembering how everything had started to shift, long before that Christmas Eve. She was 18 when the call came. Her mother's voice panicked and shrill, "Your father collapsed in the kitchen." The ambulance is on its way. She remembered running. Literally running across campus, catching the wrong bus, falling on the sidewalk. She got to the hospital just as the doctors wheeled him out of surgery, and from that moment on, everything else froze. College became optional. Her classes turned into half-attended whispers. And then, finally, she dropped out. Just for a while, she told herself. Until he gets better. He didn't. For the next 2 years, Mia fed him, cleaned him, changed his diapers, listened to him apologize through garbled speech that barely sounded human. Her mother was too exhausted, or claimed to be. Her sister had a new baby. Her brothers had jobs and wives and distance. It was Mia who sat on the edge of his bed every morning, lifting his head just so, learning how to thicken his food so he wouldn't choke. She got used to the sounds. The silence. The smell of antiseptic. Her life shrank into a schedule of pills and sponge baths. Sometimes, she forgot what her own dreams were. Or maybe she just buried them. When her father died quietly one morning, 2 years later, she cried like a child, not just for him, but for the way she'd lost herself. Her family mourned him with speeches and photo albums, but Mia grieved differently. She grieved in laundry baskets and used syringes and the way the house suddenly felt too large. After that, no one asked what she would do next. No one said, "You can go back to school now." Her mother needed help around the house. There was always something: leaky pipes, errands, childcare. Mia fell into it like a second skin. Not expected, but assumed. Years passed. Her siblings grew richer. Fancier cars. Better clothes. Her sister started throwing parties with charcuterie boards and champagne, things Mia had only seen on TV. When they talked about her, they said, "Oh, Mia? She works at that little diner." Like it was a cute hobby, not her survival. One time, she brought her own apple pie to Thanksgiving. Made from scratch, crust fluted, cinnamon just right. No one touched it. Her brother's wife had brought a store-bought cheesecake from Trader Joe's, and that disappeared in 20 minutes. Mia brought home the pie in silence. Ate a slice cold the next morning. It tasted like shame. At work, she became the reliable one. Always covering shifts. Never complaining. When a new girl cried in the break room after a rude customer, Mia sat next to her and said nothing, just handed her a tissue. No one ever did that for her. She wasn't loud. She wasn't dramatic. Her sadness was soft, invisible. Like steam on a mirror, it was always there, just not sharp enough to notice. But the Christmas rejection broke something that had already been cracking for years. Now, days after submitting that application, she waited. And in that waiting, she realized something strange. She hadn't told anyone. Not her mother. Not her siblings. Not even the girl at the diner who sometimes shared her fries. Because deep down, she didn't want their opinion. She wanted it to be hers. She started spending her nights at the library. Reading again. Quietly reteaching herself math and anatomy. Some nights, she fell asleep at the table, waking to the gentle cough of the janitor who would just shake his head and smile. She'd walk home in the cold, stiff and sore, but somehow alive. One evening, while walking past a lit-up store window, she caught sight of her reflection. She didn't look successful. She didn't look special. But for the first time in years, she didn't look lost. She smiled. Just a little. The acceptance email arrived on a Tuesday morning. She almost missed it, buried between ads, late payment notices, and a coupon for frozen dinners. The subject line was plain: "Congratulations, you've been accepted." Mia stared at it for a long time before clicking. It was real. A small nursing program at the community college. Evening classes, financial aid available, flexible hours. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a second chance wrapped in fireworks. But it was hers. No one handed it to her. No one helped her get there. She had done this on her own, quietly, painfully, inch by inch. She sat in her kitchen, the heat from the stove fogging the window as she read the email again and again. Then she laughed. It came out sharp and strange, like a cough. And then she cried, not the silent tears of before, but something deeper. Relief. Release. Her shoulders shook. She buried her face in her arms and let herself feel proud. Just for one morning. She didn't tell anyone. When the calendar turned to December again, the group chat lit up with messages. What's everyone bringing this year? Her sister claimed desserts. Her brother offered wine. Someone asked Mia, half-heartedly, if she was coming. She stared at the blinking message bubble. Then she turned off her phone. This time, there was no hesitation. She used her Christmas tip money to book a cheap 2-night stay at a small lodge in the Colorado mountains. It wasn't fancy, no spa, no hot tub. Just a bed, a small heater, and access to snow-covered trails. On Christmas Eve, while her family probably argued over who forgot to buy whipped cream, Mia strapped on a pair of rented snowshoes and walked into the white quiet of the forest. There were no ornaments. No screaming kids. No guilt. Only the sound of her breath. The crunch of snow. The burn in her legs. She walked until she reached a ridge overlooking the valley. The town below was lit with holiday lights, but from up here, it looked like stars that had fallen to earth. She sat on a bench carved into the overlook, pulled out a thermos of coffee, and sipped slowly. She thought of her niece. Of the voicemail that never came. Of all the times she had hoped for someone to notice her absence. No one did. But she was okay. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small photograph, one of the few things she still kept from her college dorm. It was old and worn, a younger Mia, smiling in a campus sweatshirt, eyes full of something she hadn't felt in years. "I'm getting her back," she whispered to no one. The wind answered with a hush. She didn't plan on going back for New Year's. She didn't plan on going back at all. When she returned to town, the decorations were coming down. People were already talking about resolutions, diets, gyms. But Mia didn't need resolutions. She had a schedule. A class list. A future. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't shared on Facebook. But it was hers. She worked her shifts. She studied. She kept her head down. She didn't expect flowers or applause. One night, on her way home, she passed a family standing in front of a restaurant, taking pictures. The mother called out, "Everyone smile." Mia caught herself smiling too, for no reason at all. Maybe that was enough.